Voice was a big part of me deciding that I could transition. It was like the proof that I could, seeing the people who worked on their voice and got a successful result. Because it takes time. It's not something you can just, start off in a week or a month and get to the end goal. It takes months or years to get that result. So it's like trying to play with a bass guitar, like regular guitar notes. It doesn't really work. You don't have the same type of hardware, so you have to learn how to make that work. I was never going to be more accepted than the way I was coming out of high school, which was very typically male. But I was also at my most miserable then, so as I started to find myself more, I kind of broke out of that. And I mean, I've never been happier than I am right now, even though I'm not like at the end goal. Like, I'm still in the beginning stages of this process, but just getting to here, I'm very happy with. So, even if I don't have, even if the transition doesn't go great, and like I'm always in this middle area that I am now, like I'll still be happy that I'm just being myself. Like, the goal isn't for me to become, like, to go from being miserable as a typical male to being miserable as a typical female, trying to fit into some kind of mold that doesn't work for me. The goal is just to be myself, whatever that is, and be happy. I don't think I really had much opportunity to use voice outside of this group, so, I mean, once in a while there'll be an event where I'll feel comfortable using it, so just being able to have a place where I can use my voice and that's the focus is important. And the reason why I take voice so seriously is because, I mean, for me, appearances are really not that important. Like, you see somebody, you know what they look like, and it kind of, in my perspective anyway, it kind of slips away from your mind, but mostly what we do is communicate with each other socially, and voice is like the biggest part of that. So for me to be comfortable with my voice is, like, for me, the biggest obstacle to transitioning socially. The other things we do, like, it's more obvious maybe, but I don't think it's more important. To me, the voice, like, getting the right voice is the most important thing, and it will really help me be myself and be more confident in myself. So that was pretty much one of the key things in my transition, I think. I've found that dealing with females has been, especially in topics related to transition, they've been a lot more accepting, and just from that aspect it's been easier to come out to other females, and it's like I can relate to them more, or they're more compassionate towards it, whereas I tell somebody who's male about this stuff and they just kind of, they're very detached from it, and they don't really seem as supportive. Even if they accept what's happening, they don't really offer that same amount of compassion towards what's going on. So even people who I'm not very friendly with, if it tends to be the females who are more accepting and more willing to help me along the transition than men who seem like they don't really care. They'll just do whatever's. They'll wait till you force them to change their ways. A little bit more stubborn, but that's why we're always changing. Like, the person I am now is not the same as the person I was a year ago or 10 years ago. So my voice is always going to be changing. Like, things about me are always changing. I'm just going to be kind of pushing things in certain directions, but it's going to be gradual changes. So I don't expect, especially when I'm using masculine voice, like a good portion of my time still, I don't expect to be able to find my real, best feminine voice that I'm going to use all the time until I'm using it all the time. So in a way, it's kind of, there's always going to be that limitation of having multiple voices that I'm using. Even though it's all basically me, it sounds different. So I'm hoping, from what I've heard, when people use a consistent feminine voice, their masculine voice tends to go away, and they just get comfortable using that voice all the time. So it becomes less something you concentrate on and more just something that happens naturally. So it's just probably a matter of time anyway. You know, getting to know people's stories, because I think, like, once you get to know somebody and you know their story, then it's not an issue anymore. You just know them. It's not like you treat them as an object or some other group that you know nothing about. So for the most part, I think when there's those issues, it's because the people have no experience with it or they don't know anybody. So part of what we're doing is like getting to know people, and you know, it's you know, just getting to know people as people, and forming a community and not being isolated from the rest of the world. You know, like, so I mean, you're always gonna have people in your family or your friends who don't understand, who kind of will drop out of your life, but I really look at this as like an expanding experience where I'm going from a place where I felt isolated to a place where I feel like I can really, you know, become even more more entwined with the community at large, rather than feeling like I don't fit in the male persona I was living in. So yeah, I've never really had a problem with the trans community, but I've had both gay and straight people say like they don't understand it really, like on both sides. So it's just a matter of understanding, because I met a gay guy who thought I was just a gay guy who, you know, liked women's clothes somewhat, you know. So it's just a lack of understanding, I think, and that happens on both ends. Even though we're in the LBGT community, it's still, you know, primarily focused around the gays and lesbians. Even the bisexuals is kind of not really talked about as much. So even in that community, there still needs to be more awareness and acceptance. These are personal things, like your sexuality. I mean, it's between you and your partners. So I mean, and to some extent, that's a completely different issue. Like I've said in other presentations, like sex and sexuality is a much smaller issue to me than the gender identity issue. It's completely separate. So just a lot of times with people's curiosity and their lack of knowledge, they'll ask a lot of personal questions that you normally wouldn't ask somebody about their sexuality or their physical body. But I've been pretty open and willing to talk to people about it. But like, I do want to help raise awareness, but at the same time, like, I don't know if I want all my personal information to be spilled all the time to random people, you know, strangers. Transgendered is a very large umbrella, and some people would say transgendered is just a spectrum and we all fall somewhere in there, because nobody is perfectly feminine or masculine. In the same way, you could think of bisexuality as a huge spectrum that you either fall somewhere on the heterosexual or the homosexual or somewhere in between. And there's all different aspects to it. So the more you explore this stuff, the more variations and diversity you find. And I think, like, I might identify as transsexual myself, but there's people who don't identify as either male or female, so they fit in like an androgynous category, or they don't wish to have masculine or feminine qualities. They actually strive for something in between. So even that is something that is not well understood, but it falls within the transgendered category, but they might call themselves like genderqueer or androgynous. So just be aware that there's a lot of diversity, and in the end, I don't think it really matters what you label yourself. It just matters who you are as a person. So that's why I think it's important to not focus too much on the labels and how you categorize people, but just getting to know somebody, get to know their story,